All right, a very good afternoon, everyone. So this is the second or what we so-called the final workshop that we are actually doing for Ascent Health. Now, just a recap on what we did earlier on. We did some of the efficacy tests, the 0 day, whereby we are using a very old math model that is able to detect what is actually 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, the future of the malware that we actually seen today. So that was actually basically a part on talking about the use case whereby it is effective. Number one, right, efficacy is very high. Number two, we also did see that the performance of the system wasn't get impacted by the way how we actually stress test the machine with 100 pieces of malware. All right. The third part, as simple as that, we also talk about pre-execution. What happens when a malware is being executed? What happens, the difference between the traditional kind of technology where you use post-based kind of behavior analysis to actually understand what is happening versus how we are able to identify the file, whether it's good or bad, even before it is being executed. So these were actually some of the workshop that we actually run, or I would say that it's a simple demo that we run earlier on. Now, just a summary to have everyone on the same page. Ascent Health, especially Gaurav, you have actually, I would say that I'm very impressed by the way how you do the testing, and therefore we offer this second workshop where we go into in-depth about what we are talking in terms of EDR. Because as I know, you are actually testing the machines using a little bit of more sophisticated kind of methodology, right? And therefore there was a lot of question around that. I would like to actually use this workshop to actually help clarify most of the things that probably you are testing and you might not be able to get that result. And this session is for you, right? Because I know where you are coming from, what are the testing you have been doing, and I tailored this session basically for you, right?
Perfect, great.
That's great. All right, so this workshop objective, like what Gaurav you mentioned earlier on, this is actually a second part whereby we are talking about more sophisticated attack. But what really what we want to derive of it is what happens if, let's say, that is that 1% chance that it trick AI, right? There's a 1%. We in cybersecurity we can't guarantee 100%. That 1%, exactly. How do we can't mitigate the risk, but definitely we can reduce the risk. How are we able to reduce the risk? This I will talk about it later on. Second part, because of the solution set itself, today what we are looking is not whether a file is good or bad. We are also able to actually give you that visibility, what this file is doing within your environment itself. So in fact, with this solution, immediately you increase your visibility. You are now equipped with information for you to address or for you to answer to the board members or even your CISO, what really happened, what this file actually caused within your environment itself. Now, the third part is also lower total operational costs, or lower the operational overheads. Now, if you are able to actually see on the market, there are a few EDR players, and lo and behold, I've actually met with a lot of customers, right? They mentioned that it is very difficult to actually manage this kind of solution. Basically, because we are all, me, you, and the rest of the team, we are all actually more geared towards network security kind of technology itself, right? We are looking at firewall policies, host IPS, URL, all this. But when we talk about endpoint detection and response, we are really looking at registry keys, right? Process, network beaconing, so on and so forth. So how do we actually manage that? Okay, later I'll actually be precisely clear the difference between us and other technology players and how easy it is to operate our solution in such case. Now, the last part, I shall not go into details, but you can see that in fact, scalability is one of our key areas whereby we want to see Ascent Health to grow, right? We want to grow with the customer. We do not want to actually see that you become stagnant, your nodes, right, per year is actually stagnant. But what if tomorrow, or the next year, Ascent Health actually grow to 1,000 nodes, 2,000 nodes, 10,000 nodes? Now, having a very flexible architecture design that sits on the cloud will help you in this area because you do not need to redesign whatever network architecture that you have put in place. Now, today's state, right, Gaurav, you have actually tested a lot about the PowerShell, scripts, everything.
Yes.
I acknowledge that, and I really, you know, I really respect the detailed testing that you have done, right? So this is actually a typical way how an attack actually happens today. Where do I get this information from? It is not about, this is through my experience.
Mm,
In fact, before I joined Silence, you would have known that I was also working in FireEye, and I've seen numerous kind of attacks that happen in the industry. In my own eyes, it's not from a third party, it's not reading from reports, but in my own eyes,
mm,
I really see a lot of cases where happen. And I'm also
right.
instrumental in solving a lot of cases, right? Kind of
Mm,
sophisticated attack using silence technology. Now, let me actually share with you what is today's state, right? Today's state, if we talk about cyber kill chain, you know that there are different phases. There are reconnaissance, payload delivery, installation, lateral movement, returning back to C2C, and then data exfiltration. All in all, some people have actually mentioned that there are 5 phases. Some actually mentioned that there are 7 phases. Now, we are actually doing a subset, right? Let's not be
right.
ambitious, right? Let's not be ambitious. We are looking at one actually very simple way of how an attacker or threat actors can do a ransomware in your environment, right?
Mm,
Tricking the users. So this is also a cyber kill chain. Now, a cyber kill chain actually mentioned that there are phases. Now, number one is weaponization of a application. Now, the easiest way to weaponize a document, to weaponize an application, you can find vulnerabilities in Adobe Acrobat readers. You can find vulnerability in Java, but that is actually very tedious. So the easiest way is what we have, everyone have, is Microsoft Office, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft document itself. So an attacker will try to use this method to actually weaponize that. So once your document is being compromised, when the user actually execute, the payload will then be delivered. So when the payload is being developed, being delivered to the endpoint, the next step is that there's an automated way of how this will get triggered and installed in your operating system. And finally, the ransomware kick in, and then the whole system become ransomware. Okay, so I'm actually hold your horses first. I'm actually going to actually demonstrate the whole queue chain in the demonstration later on. All right, but before that, I want to show you what silence is solving, right? Because if you look at today's market, right, a lot of technology players says that I can actually solve queue chain, right? Everyone can solve queue chain, to be honest, right? Everyone can solve queue chain. Now, let me tell you how they solve it for you. Okay, in a traditional kind of EDR solutions that they have, right, they will definitely reflect the sequence of attack, because EDR actually you have to actually have this capability, what we so-called flight recorder. Okay, it's a recording system that actually records the whole process itself. Now, if you actually adopt this strategy itself, what will you then do, right? Garaf, if let's say you are, you know, you have actually many things to work on, right? How are you able to, you know, how are you able to actually work on this? Now, let me actually share with you what the traditional or normal EDR players does. You will then respond to the alert, because this actually happen, right? You will actually determine the alert, respond to the alert, and then you determine what are the malicious process, and then terminate them accordingly. So what happened here, what I mean here is that you will definitely see the whole queue chain. You will see how how is it being weaponized, how is it being delivered, how is it being installed, how is it being ransomware. After you collect all the information itself, right, then you respond to that. You try to respond by, you know, killing some of the process. For example, if for ransomware, there is always a delete shadow copy. So you try to actually terminate the process. But this is actually very reactive. So this is actually very reactive, right? You see something and then you react to that. Now, you will then actually analyze the document. So if let's say this is a weaponized document, you saw the whole queue chain, right? You saw the whole process. You will actually analyze the document. You will see what URL is going to and what is the payload. And then after that, I think you all are very familiar with this keyword called indicators of compromise. Then Garaf, not anyone else,
yes.
you and your team will then go and analyze it. Oh, this is actually the document. This is actually a hash file. Oh, this actually downloaded a payload called something.exe file into the temp drive, and then you get installed, and then you get ransomware. So you will actually create an indicator of compromise, which is what we so-called a rule. Okay, a rule says that if today I see this document coming in, and then I see that it is going to this URL, and then it's going to actually hit me with a file that is downloaded. I want to stop the whole process. So this is how you create an indicator of compromise. Not so bad if, let's say, in a year you have 2 or 3 kind of incidents, such incidents, or 4 or 5 kinds, still pretty much manageable. But what if today I'm going to tell you is that if today this is actually a widespread, it's a wildfire, right? It's a wildfire. This malware, like for example, in 2017, WannaCry actually spread very, very fast. Within weeks, I'm not saying within weeks, within days, a lot of organization has already been crippled, because the fact here is that WannaCry actually uses certain vulnerabilities that is inherently found in the operating system already. It is actually nothing great about this ransomware. It's just that it actually know one vulnerability in Microsoft, which is the SMB vulnerability, which what we so-called eternal blue, and then they use these means to actually spread it very fast. Okay, coupled with what? Coupled with mutation of a ransomware. So the ransomware was actually mutated. So once you mutate some files, right, a traditional AV will not be able to detect that, because it is a new hash, it is a new file. So your traditional kind of AV will not be able to cope with this kind of constant mutation, constant new kind of files. And therefore, it brings the downfall of all the organization, very huge organization worldwide. Okay, it actually brought down two things that we need to learn from that. Number one, vulnerabilities found in a very much Windows operating system. Okay, this is number one. Number two, what is the thing? Mutation of the file that resulted in a zero-day malware. So that zero-day ransomware actually escaped a lot of eyes under the eyes of a lot of traditional AV technology players. Now you can do that, right? You can do that by all means, but very tedious, right? You will have to hire a team of people to help you always look at that. And rest assured, when you actually have this kind of power, right? This kind of tooling that give you that visibility itself. Now, immediately you are seeing more things. When you see more things, you need to actually, what do you need to do? You need to react, you need to create process for more things. So in fact, by having such tools in your environment, it's a double-edged sword. It could mean that you can have more visibility, and at the same time, it will also mean that you need to actually, because of you having more visibility, you need to work harder. And we saw that problem. So Silence is trying to address that problem. Okay, we are trying to address that problem by giving you the visibility, but also using AI to help you manage that in a way that you do not need excessive overhead on this problem. Now, I'm also actually able to be very bold and confident to tell you that when you choose Silence as your solution, as your product on endpoint, I want to make sure, I want to actually use that as my commitment to every single customers, right? I want you to be operationally ready from day one. How do I actually achieve that? Correct. Gaurav, you will be actually asking me, what makes you think that you have such a bold statement that, not all AV technology players says that I can guarantee you 100% that you are being protected. Even if you have an EDR solution, right? Even you heard of FireEye, they say that you are bound to actually get attacked is how you respond. And they will always say that you will definitely get a patient zero. Now, then it comes back to the methodology. All right, the philosophy of Silence is that we want you to actually be equipped with a prevention first strategy itself. Now, later on, I will show you, but let us go into a theory part itself. Next generation AV EDR solution of Silence will stop and respond to a malicious threat automatically on the fly. Now, we don't wait for things to happen. In a traditional EDR player concept, right, what it does is that it actually looks at a whole thing. It looks at, how do I say? It looks at a crime scene, and it sees, it's not just like a CCTV, right? It looks at how a burglar actually came into the house, how he steal, what method he used to pick your lock, whatsoever. And then you create your strategy to prevent the next burglar to come into your house. Now, for us, it's very different. We don't look at the whole picture to then tell you what you need to do. When there's a telltale sign, right? If let's say a burglar is trying to pick your lock, you sense that the lock is actually making some noise. What do? Do you allow that to happen through the whole process until the robber actually or the burglar actually take the money out of the house? Then you actually act on that, or your strategy is then, you see, if let's say you are picking my lock and I hear that, I'll be stopping you from doing that in the very first instance. And if you agree to this strategy that you want, then Silence is the right solution. Silence is that solution for you. right? Because whenever we see a document being weaponized, right, there's no need for a second thought. If let's say it's being weaponized, I will block it. If let's say I saw that if let's say this part is missed, right, we use a defense in depth layer approach. If the weaponization we miss it, the delivery, we try to actually block the delivery. Because let's say you do a PowerShell download, a delivery that is not using a HTTP, right? It's not a human to actually initiate a download. It's an automated kind of download. Do you want to actually allow that to happen, or do you not want? So if we saw that, we actually stop that. If we can't see that, then the installation part, silence protect will kick in, because no matter what, the AI will actually look at the payload of the file and then determine whether, and look at the structure of the file and then determine whether to allow that to run or to stop. So in this way, right, this is actually a defense in layered approach itself. Now, no security vendors can guarantee you 100%, but with the right methodology, with the right philosophy, with the right way of how we actually build that defense in that capability itself, you are able to, that is your best chance to prevent attacks itself. Second thing, you will be asking me, Eng, how, if let's say you are using one component to identify that this is malicious and you block, do you actually foresee false positive? I will not say no, but Silence has been using AI as a tool to help us to understand what is good and what is bad. I will not, probably a document that has been weaponized with some macros. Probably there are 100 kind of documents itself. Maybe, I would say that maybe we block this malicious document, we block 100 times, maybe 1% could be a false positive. And it creates a problem with your customers, right? With your end users. They will say, hey, how come you actually delete? How come you actually prevented? This is actually confirmed legitimate. Now, you prevented 99% of the attacks itself. That 1% false positive, very honest with you, right? I'm not actually overselling you anything, right? You can say that there's false positive, but that false positive itself saves 99 devices that you are actually protecting against. So if you weigh around, you know, how you want to do between flexibility and, we always have a terminology called flexibility versus security. Now you weigh a lot on security without having a lot of false positive, you save, you know, a lot of problems within your environment itself. So the analyst, you yourself will actually review the alert and understand that it has been terminated successfully, and then you re-strategize with security process. How I actually mentioned about that. So you know that there's some URL, it's already stopped. But as a security practitioner or as a strategy, right, you always want to push your, and I would not blame that, okay? Everyone will want to push the threats away to the parameter as much as possible. That is one strategy that a lot of people actually adopt. And in our real world environment, it's also the same, right? We have a door, we have a gate, and then we have a main gate itself. So we want to push all the threats as far as possible. So if we are able to actually have these visibilities, now imagine that you can actually use these URLs to actually put in your proxy servers, saying that, okay, now users, you are not allowed to actually visit this proxy. We are not saying that we are actually trying to actually mitigate, right? We are trying to actually say that this is not our job. But again, this is a strategy of defense in depth. Now, your proxy may have missed it, but when it comes to the endpoint itself, you are well aware that Silence is actually protecting you against these kind of attacks. Now, how do we do that? Automated defense in depth. How do we do that? You know, you will be actually saying, what you're actually saying is all concept. You're actually talking to me concepts, right? Now, show me in exactly referencing to technology, how you actually help me on that, based on what I actually mentioned to you on the cyber kill chain. Now, when this is actually a weaponization of attack, the feature and functionality that Silence has for you is that a document with malicious scripts activated will be flagged out by Silence and automatically be blocked. Now, Garaf, you have actually seen that we are actually able to look at scripts itself. This is one thing.
Yes.
But into that, whether what a script is bad or good, in the Silence Protect, you are not able to actually clearly identify. And that is not the job of Silence Protect. Now, in the demonstration later on, I will show you, right, how our EDR capability is able to help you identify whether this script is actually good or bad itself. Second part, delivery. Okay, second part is delivery. Okay. Our ability to detect malicious payload, and upon landing in the device, Silence Protect, this is actually a protect technology itself, scans and quarantine the file, Okay, it scans and then it quarantines the file. What if this wasn't picked up, right? The installation. Silence pre-execution. Graph, you know that this is actually pre-execution. Every file that wants to run will do a runtime intercept. We will not allow the file to run and then use post a behavior base to actually block the file. Every time when a file wants to run, within the first 100 milliseconds, we scan the file. If let's say it's not good, we will not allow the CPU or the memory to execute the file. So again, in the installation part, Silence will actually use this pre-execution technology, right? Prevention to allow the AI to scan the file first before the execution is allowed. Now, do we actually slow down or do we actually affect the user experience? The answer is no, because by scanning the file first doesn't impact the user experience. As we mentioned along the way, always mention, we take less than 100 milliseconds to scan the file. 100 milliseconds is faster than you blink your eye, okay? So your users will not actually experience any lag in this kind of technology. Number 4 part, ransomware. Behavior of ransomware, which includes delete, shadow copy, you know, sometimes it actually put in some scheduled tasks itself. All these, all in all, being detected by the Silence itself. And, you know, all these kind of post kind of behaviors are being seen as a MITRE ATT&CK framework itself. We are able to actually look at that. Now, if you think about that, right, I have made proof that, you know, every technology that we have match back to how we solve the cyber kill chain attack, different phases of attack itself. Now, I hope that this will give you a very high confidence that, you know, Silence is actually knowing what we are doing. We know what we are doing and we know how to protect your systems from being compromised. Okay, so now reduction of risk I will not cover, right? This is actually basically I have run through before. It's more of the protect part, because the protect is basically to help you reduce your risk. From, you know, the traditional AV, probably you're exposed to 80% or 90% of the risk out there, because your signatures cannot get updated very fast, till the stage whereby if you move to Silence, we help you prevent 99.9%. Okay, that increase in the efficacy and everything greatly help you reduce your risk. Now, the second part here that we are going through in details is the increase in visibility and awareness. So you actually have the threat info. We are able to actually look at the focus view, right? How the attack happens before, during, and after. I'm also going to show you a little bit of capability of how we do threat hunting, contextual analysis engine, which is our engine that we use AI to actually look at what is the good behavior and what is the bad behavior, as well as we adopt the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So if you have an audit, right, and the audit says that, you know, Ascent Health today, you need to actually have a solution that addresses MITRE ATT&CK framework. This is something that we do religiously, right? And we are constantly improving the attacks that we can see based on MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now, lower total operational costs, lower operational overhead. This is one thing that I want to mention to you. Now, in a traditional EDR, because the fact here is that they are always doing constant recording, so you actually take out a lot of bandwidth. You actually take out a lot of storage space itself. Now, Silence actually, with that, we have a different approach. Now, remember one thing, the strategy that Silence wants to adopt is always not causing user experience, right? Not causing any user experience. So what we actually adopt is that we do not actually need to record everything, right? It's only things that happen, then we record. And that resonates very well. If you can't understand the strategy, right, using a layman, right, you know, when we drive a car, usually we have the in-car camera thing, right? In-car camera thing. So lately I saw that there are some upgraded version of the in-car camera. So they are not recording, so they don't store everything. So, but if let's say your car actually have a bump, right, has an accident, that triggers that part before, during, and after that is stored to a certain part of the memory card itself, right? This is exactly what we do, because no point we record everything, right? We only record what is important and then alert the administrator what is actually relevant in the information. This solve a lot of things. You will not have overloaded kind of information for you to actually look at things. Number 2, storage. Number 3, bandwidth. So this is how we actually lower the operational. Scalability are not we're going to go through. You have already seen how easy it is to deploy. And Gareth, thanks a lot. You have actually managed to deploy quite a fair bit of endpoints in your environment. And I think that, yes, and I think that you should actually have a good experience that installing them, these agents doesn't really requires a lot of rocket science kind of education, right? It's as
Not at
simple
all,
as
not
that.
at all.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Thank you. So, okay, without further ado, let me actually jump straight into the demonstration. However, if let's say there is any questions along the way, right, please feel free to stop me, right? Please feel free to actually ask me questions. I love questions. Please just feel free to ask me why do you do that? Why do you do that? How do you actually look at these things, right? Let me know, right? So before I run a bit, and one thing, let me actually open up my console. So this is actually a silent
I
console.
have one question.
Yes, Gaurav, please.
Yeah, so my question here is, for example, we have currently two modules, right? One is silence optics and one is silence protect,
That's right.
right? So how would the license cost be? It would be a modular basis or it would be a single cost for both of the modules?
Okay, very good question. So the silence protect and the silence optics, we are actually, okay, so this is actually a single installer. So when you actually make the purchase,
Hmm.
usually what Harari quoted you was silence protect. But if you want the optics functionality, that is, if I'm not wrong, don't quote me, it is about 10 or 20% price difference itself. We are not
Okay.
charging exorbitant price on optics. It's just an add-on about 10 to 20% price point. Okay.
Okay.
The
Okay.
console, everything is managed under a single console, so it's not a different console
Right.
at all.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So optics is actually, uh, I would say that, how I say, it is not a very simple thing. It is not a very complicated thing. But for the benefit of today's session, right,
Hmm.
I'm going to tell you exactly how to easily manage that. So we always start from walking to
Okay.
flying, right? So we just don't be so ambitious. I will actually guide you through what I want to do, right? And
Right.
from there, we actually have more in-depth discussion. Number one thing, detection rules, right? When the Protect is actually more or less very automated kind of technology. So you can configure it and you let it run, right? There's nothing rocket science about that. But the optics, we actually have the rules itself. And why do we have a rules? Why you will say that, why do I actually need to create a rules? How come this technology can't actually automatically protect? Now, there's a reason to that. Every single environment is different. Okay, the way how you actually run your backup is different from how other organizations run their backup. If I have a set of rules that actually is being configured for all organization, then you will get a lot of false positive. So what we want to do here is that we want to give you that flexibility to turn on policies that mean something in your environment. Now, let me actually go through this thing with you. I'm going to create a new policy, optics policy, right? And I'm going to actually name it. For example, I can say that this is actually Ascent Health. Let me say that to be deleted, because this is actually a shared console. So I just want to make sure that I don't mess up this thing. Now, optics rules, right? What we do here is that optics rule has to tie to a protect rule. Okay, let me actually comes to here. Okay, remember clearly. Now, if you have the optics rule tie to a protect rule. Gaurav, you have created protect rule before, right? And a protect rule will tie to a device, to a
Right.
set of devices, right? So make
Right.
sure that you have this concept right. So a device inherit a protect rule. And the protect rules, if you want to have optics actually running in the device itself, the optics rule needs to tie into this protect rule. And if you look at here, it tells you that what is the device policy that you want to tie to. So remember that you need to tie
Right.
to one policy. All right,
Right. Right.
very clear on that. Good. All right, so if you are able to see from this optics policy here, you'll see a lot of things, right? But don't get too, as I mentioned, don't get too ambitious. Let's do something that's relevant, important, right? So what is actually important? Now, a lot of times I will not turn on every single policy. And especially if you have our Threat Zero professional service team being involved, right? They will help you to configure this policy as much as possible to as close to your environment as possible. So a few things that I will always turn on: registry keys. Okay, these are registry key. If let's say a registry
Hmm.
key is being uh, is actually being targeted and installed in your registry keys, what we do here is that we will actually delete the registry keys. Now, we
Okay.
also talk about, if let's say this is actually silence protect, silent suddenly actually has a suspicious exit. This is actually also real life. I see many case threat actors come in, they disable the AV so that they can actually run the whatever necessary malicious files that is possible. So you also want to actually do this thing, right? You also want to actually say that I want to actually get alerted for Fowler's PowerShell malware. For PowerShell download, I also want, because why do we want to actually download things from a PowerShell command, right? PowerShell that has encoded command, right? Why do we
Right.
want to actually encode the command? So you see, this actually makes me very easy to digest this solution because first of all, I only turn on alerts that I know that is actually relevant, right? That makes sense. Gaurav, I think you know what you are doing because when I say, right, you will say that yes, this is what I want. This I see is what happening. So we don't turn on things that we don't know first. We turn on things that we see day in, day out. 90% of the time we see that so that we
Right.
don't overwhelm with us with many irrelevant information. Like for example, internet browser with suspicious process. So if let's say you have an Internet Explorer, and then the parent
Hmm.
process is an application. What can that mean? It can mean that the application is using your Internet Explorer to go and download something. So this is also something that you don't like, right? So all these things make sense one. The policies that we created for you, that we actually help to create for you, is very user friendly. Okay. Now, if let's say we
Okay.
talk about my attack frameworks, is also another total kind of things that you will want to actually take a look at. For example, like I mentioned earlier on, what if let's say you have a bypass account user account control,
Hmm.
right? What if let's say you have a screensaver? My attack framework says that screensaver is actually malicious as well. What if let's
Right.
say for
So
example,
.scr files were for the WannaCry attack, I guess.
Exactly. So what about no, you can see many like for example, scheduled task persistent. Later I'll show you. This one is very interesting. So scheduled task persistent, it means that the attackers come in, they use a PowerShell to actually create a scheduled task so that
Right.
the file can run over and over again over a period of time. So you can see over here, right? Is it hard to actually understand optics? I will not say no. Unless you turn on everything, then you will start to actually think that, hey, this is actually very hard technology itself. Now,
Hmm.
apart from that, hey, uh, Praspra, you actually raise your hand. Is there a
Yeah.
question that I can help you answer? I will stop now, pause now.
So I mean, you're explaining about the software being downloaded via Internet Explorer. So you enabled it. How do you differentiate between a software that is using Internet Explorer to download as well as the human interface? How is it actually differentiating using here?
Very good question. Very good question. So you see, let me actually give you an example. If let's say applications, right, when it needs to download a file, does it need to trick the system to say that it is actually going to the Internet Explorer to download the file, or the applications will immediately go and fetch the file within the application itself? This is my question. So the question is very simple, right? I mean, the answer is very simple. In a normal application, like for example, if you let's say you do a Adobe Acrobat update, does your Adobe Acrobat use an Internet Explorer to fetch that update before it get installed? Does it need to go through this route? It doesn't. Now, threat actors, they are very smart. They try to hide their tails. They try to hide their uh, what they are actually doing. So in this case, right, if let's say an application, they know that this is an application, they have the vulnerabilities. They actually exploit the vulnerabilities, and they trigger Internet Explorer. So in the eyes of a user itself, right, or even traditional AV, it says that, hey, this is actually maybe it's a user that uses Internet Explorer to download the file, right? Nothing suspicious. But if you have a tool that is able to link this story up, the applications go to the Internet Explorer, download the file. Obviously, right? I mean, I would not say that it is definitely a good case, but how the behavior of this is actually very highly suspicious. So we can actually stop this from happening. Now, how do we
Um,
stop this?
Okay. I mean,
Yep.
just a small clarification here. In case if we have a script which is which will be pointed to a endpoint, and that it pulls the data from there and starts installing it using the script itself, which a genuine script that we have written, even that your product blocks it. I mean,
Oh yeah, correct. That's right. If let's say it's a script, right, that wants to run within the environment itself, for example, PowerShell or whatsoever, we will actually lock the script. We will be able to see the script as well. So this is actually what happens, right? Let me actually show you. If you have not seen this console, this is what I'm going to show you. If let's say this is a script control, right, you'll be able to see all the script that runs. Like for example, this is a PowerShell script, right? So on and so forth. You are be able to see exactly the command that is actually being run.
okay. So this it. I mean, your product, it sends it and it's having as a directory over here, or we have to add the script over here in case, like, say this is a legitimate script, and if it comes, you just allow it. Don't do any scanning. Is it like that?
No, okay, so let me actually rephrase it. So for in the silence protect, okay, okay. So although we can actually detect the script, right, especially the command itself, right, but we can't clearly. So for example, this script itself, can we ascertain that this is actually a good script, or this is actually a good command, or this is not a good command? We can't ascertain that, right? Because every kind of environment, again, I say is very different, right? But we can actually use the functionality of protect. For example, let me actually go back to this configuration real fast. For example, if let's say this PowerShell, right, it can have actually have a full script itself. But let's say if this PowerShell is the script is using PowerShell to download the file itself. Now it can be legitimate. It can be legitimate, which we can actually create a policy to allow that. However, because this is actually what thing you can create exception. Say that if let's say it's a PowerShell that is downloading this file, I allow that. But how many times, right, have we seen a PowerShell downloading a file itself? Not many times, right? If let's say this happened, it has to be something that's suspicious already. So in this case, we are not stopping the whole PowerShell, but we are stopping the process whereby it is downloading the file. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah.
So in this case, we are not intrusive. We are very targeted. We want to stop that single. We do not want to actually impact your business operation, but we also want to actually help you to keep lookout of that single process that is actually malicious. We will stop that from happening. Now, of course, you can see that just now, you can see from my screen, we have exceptions. If let's say there is something really legitimate and we know that the behavior, for example, is a PowerShell, yes, it's a normal operation. You are going to a URL to download this file. We will create a what exceptions so that the next time the users actually use PowerShell to download this file itself, it will not get blocked. The second thing here is that we are also able to what, as I mentioned earlier on, right? A PowerShell download, we are actually able to terminate the process. This is that flexibility that we are giving you. We are able to actually terminate just the download. The way how it actually does the download, we are able to terminate the process. Now, we are also able to give you that authority, and this tool has the capability to even terminate the whole process tree, which means that the whole script, the whole PowerShell, I will shut it all down. Not even, I'll not only that I'll shut down, I'll stop the download process, I'll also shut down your PowerShell, the whole script. We also have different areas how we actually do things, right? We can actually even lock off the user itself. If you find that, you want to lock off the users, you want to actually suspend the process for the time being, or you want to actually have a notification window to tell the users, hey, this is something that, I want to let you know that, this is something not good that you are doing. This is your behavior is being logged, right? You can also do that. So we have different way of how we react to this kind of attacks itself. Now, this come to a point. whereby, you know, our EDI is automated. So when we do not actually need to actually look through the whole cycle before we act on that, any kind of telltale sign, very simple kind of attacks methodology that we see is suspicious, we'll stop it from happening. Okay, this is actually what I so-called, if let's say we understand about this policy itself, now I'm going to go through the EDR piece, because later when we actually have a detection and I pivot back into the console, you will have a better understanding of what I've been talking. All right. So this is actually the Silence Optic console, and this is my favorite page because all detection, all problems will be seen in this page. All right. Now, give me a minute. I'm going to actually check for policy update one last time. So this is actually my Windows machine itself, right? I'm running on a Windows 10 machine. A few things that I want to go through with you, right? I think Gaurav has done some testing. Some testing can be detected, some testing cannot be detected, and that was some of the questions, right? And the reason is, yeah, and the reason is very simple. On the optics, so the way how optics works is that, or how a security technology works is that we can create the solutions to be very sensitive. And when we create it to be very sensitive, we log a lot of information. And most of the time it is false positive. But we can also tune the policy, tune the solutions to a point whereby we understand that that action itself has an impact on the operating system, and it can really impact the operating system. Thereby, we will then get it alerted. So in this case, right, let me actually show you an example. Huh? This is a command prompt that I'm going to run as administrator. I have certain scripts that I run usually, and this is actually proprietary to, you know, when we do actually some testing itself. So this is actually a command prompt script, and we can actually, okay, this is not a weaponized attack. First, I'm going to try to address that these are things, no matter what, when you actually hit certain policies itself, we will definitely get alerted itself. This is actually very much like a testing tools itself. Now, for example, give me a minute. Today we are looking at let's take a look. All right, let us take a look at PowerShell. Okay, if let's say this is a PowerShell, and what we want to do here is we want to actually use a fileless PowerShell malware and dump it to a file, right? Which is what we so-called Minikats kind of dumping. So we press number 4, and then it says that all the credentials will be dumped to a free credential.txt, and I'll put enter itself. So immediately when I actually do these things, right, and I turn on notification, therefore you can see this thing, right? So the Silence Optics actually says that there's an alert itself. And if you can see over here in this folder itself, so we actually have a free credential dump itself that we dump all the minicats that we have seen into this file itself, right? However, this one I just want to make known to one thing is that Windows 10 has added security functionalities regarding minicats. So certainly sometimes you will not be able to see that happen because Windows 10 already prevented that from happening. Now the second example, before I go to a console, we do some testing. We do some testing first before we do some alerts first before we go into the console, so that we no need to pivot here and there. Again, what happened here is that I'm going to actually use a PowerShell encoded command. Okay, again, I'm going to use a PowerShell encoded command that drive a mini cast. So I'm going to put a tree, and what happened here is that this command, this PowerShell will be encoded, and this encoded, if let's say we decode that, we'll see that it is trying to do a mini cast, it's doing a credential dumps to this command prompt. Okay, so this is the second example. Okay, encoded command. The third one that I'm going to go through is that I'm going to do a PowerShell download. Okay, I'm going to do a PowerShell download itself. So this is actually number 5, and we'll do a PowerShell download itself. So this is actually an example what I actually mentioned. A PowerShell, why do you actually need to go to download a file using PowerShell? Now, always remember, this is actually a command prompt. Backend, the process of PowerShell is running. Okay, all these are actually triggered by PowerShell.
And how I have a question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, now when we are running command prompt and trying to run a PowerShell script, it is getting detected, right? So now if we try and run the download command directly via PowerShell in the PowerShell, in the PowerShell console itself, will it still be detected?
It really depends. It really depends, because as a attacker itself, right? If let's say, this is actually okay. You brought up a very good question. This is not a very straightforward answer itself. Now, there is a lot of ways how you, because PowerShell, right? There's a lot of way how you actually trigger a download process itself, right?
Right.
But it actually needs to meet certain categories and criteria, and we don't actually use that, because if let's say, for example, who is that asking this question? Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Gaurav or
Gaurav, yeah.
Gaurav? Okay. So if let's say you are an administrator and you already gain a PowerShell console itself,
Right.
and you are
Right.
actually doing certain thing itself, that probably will not trigger us, because that behavior was that you already gained the administrator right, and you know you are actually firing out the PowerShell in accordance, because in a real world attack itself, the attackers will not be able to remote in, open up a PowerShell in front of the system itself, key in the download command, and then press enter. It can't.
Right.
It can't,
Right.
right? So it goes through a certain. It has to be a backend process. It has to be from a script or whatever that triggers a backend PowerShell. So imagine, if let's say, whatever you say that, I open up PowerShell and I do a next step and I want to know that this is actually a problem, then you will face a lot of problem, because administrators, when they do a PowerShell, when they are doing certain work and they do this thing and it get alerted all the way in your console. This is something that you do not want that to happen, right? So I hope that this answer your question. It's not a straightforward answer.
So my main concern is regarding the administrators only, because for example, let's assume that I am administrator of my machine, or let's say a lot of machines, and I go rogue. I am a disgruntled employee and I want to do some harm to my organization, and I start using PowerShell because I know somewhere PowerShell is not going to detect anything. So my worry is only where an administrator is having access and the PowerShell queries are not detected inside the PowerShell. So otherwise, during the testing, I was successfully able to detect the PowerShell if I'm running it via the command prompt. For example, let's say I open the command prompt, then I say PowerShell.exe -file and run that particular file. That file gets detected.
Yeah.
Now, if I open the PowerShell console and run the same file, then it won't be detected, right? So majority, if I'm not wrong, so majority of the Windows administrators, they are very good with PowerShell, and they know a lot of queries and they know a lot of ways to download stuff. They know a lot of ways to extract a lot of details from the environment. So my main concern is around administrator. So let's assume that I am the administrator and I have PowerShell. Do we have any workaround as well? For example, if we block
good,
PowerShell.
good, good question. Good question. So this is actually a two-edged sword, right? Because what your problem now is an insider threat of problem.
Exactly.
It's an insider threat. The technology itself, when we build the technology, we are actually building the solutions to guard against normal threat actors that doesn't have administrator rights, right? And trying to compromise the system. So the whole solution is built around this technology itself. Now, if let's say you are actually referring, I can understand your pain point, right? Not saying that we are not addressing, but the address on this part of issue might not be very good. But let me actually give you some examples that we can do, right?
Okay.
For example, if let's say you have an administrator rights, like I mentioned it with you in the email itself, right? This is the problem. If attackers come in, right, a threat actor come in, what they want to actually do is that they want to actually gain administrative right. Because once they gain administrative right, that is the end. I'm sorry to say that is the end of your environment itself, because administrators can do everything. They can
Right.
actually install things, they can actually uninstall things, they can actually do any single thing that they want because they hold the
Exactly.
key to everything.
Exactly.
Now, the next question here is that the next problem that I would say, can we actually mitigate your concern? I can't say 100%, but what about 50% of that? Now, if let's say your administrator is actually doing credential dumping, okay, like for example, doing information stealing itself,
Right.
I will not say that we had a perfect solution for that, because administrator by right, okay, by right, there's nothing that they don't know. They don't even need to actually do mini cache or credential dumping. They can actually access the Active Directory and get whatever information that they want, right?
Exactly.
True. So, so what we can prevent from a perspective from our solution is that we can prevent them from doing harm to the device. I repeat again, prevent them from doing harm, but we cannot really prevent them from getting information out of the system itself. That is not what the technology is built to be. But if the roach administrator wants to actually install a ransomware or whatsoever using PowerShell, in fact, right, if let's say an administrator has an administrator right, he can actually put the file inside, run the file as administrator, and everything get ransomware. He doesn't really need to actually go through
Agreed.
such problem.
So my only question arises is that, for example, let's say a Windows administrator, not even a security administrator, who, for example, let's say if I am a security administrator, I go rogue, one of the first thing I'll do is I'll uninstall Silence and do whatever thing I want to do. But I'm talking about other administrators who are not having much rights but are also having rights, so kind of 70-30%. So because, for example, they cannot touch the Silence policies, or they cannot install any new policies on the Silence where their detection won't be, I mean, they cannot edit any policy. My concern is, let's say if such administrators, assume a Windows administrator who knows some PowerShell scripting and who knows some of their friends, or who knows something to harm the computer or harm the organization. So my only question arises is, in PowerShell right now, the main concern is I am not even getting an alert that a query was run. My only query is that even if I start getting those alerts that something has run inside the PowerShell, then I can at least see that log on my Silence console, and then I might know that someone is trying to run something.
Okay, so Gaurav, so this is actually very relevant. Okay, so I get what your question is. So
Yes.
because today, as you know, the technology, right, for PowerShell, you need to actually, this is how the technology works, how the solution actually works at this point of time, is that you need to actually turn PowerShell to blocking, right? Then you are able to see what are the commands that is being run. And if let's say in the Silence Protect configuration, if you turn on the PowerShell blocking itself, there's no way that the administrators can run the PowerShell at all. So you actually block everything. And then it's just like a firewall. You block everything, and then you only allow what is allowed. So that is the best strategy that I can think of now.
Understood. Understood.
All right. Cool.
Okay,
So
cool.
yeah. So let's go to the interesting part. Okay, we are actually looking at the console, how we are able to detect things. Huh? Okay, this is detections. Right. Okay. Let me filter out. Device. All right. Let us filter out. Okay. So this is actually very simple. All right. Just now we tested three things, right? Number one, PowerShell download. Number two, credential dumping. Number three, flawless PowerShell malware. So all these are actually been detected. Okay. Now, you may ask me a question, in how? Why can't you actually group all the things into one piece of information? Why don't you do that? Now, let me actually tell you something. Okay, this is very important, a concept. Your traditional EDR do this thing, so they can actually group everything because they see everything already. Then they group it into one single alert for you. But because of our technology, our strategy, and our philosophy is that whatever things that has actually been detected, we have the capability to block it. So that's why our alert mechanism is one piece by one piece. There's good and bad, all right. But I personally feel that the advantage is more than disadvantage because now, okay, let me actually walk you through. Then you will see how I actually examine these things. Okay, so the first alert actually came was a PowerShell download. And if let's say this is of interest to me, I can actually view what is happening. When I come here and take a look at what is happening, right? Right, we saw that there is actually a PowerShell download. Now, Gaurav, you will think that, hey, what is this PowerShell download all about? So you can see over here is that we are able to tell you that this is a command, exactly what we see, right? I'm using a command prompt and that triggers to a PowerShell. And then we are able to actually exactly see that this PowerShell, and it matched certain things. It matched that it is actually doing a download string and it is going to the URL. And after that, right, it is trying to invoke Minikat's credential dump, which is what is so called, it is trying to go to this URL to fetch a file and then invoking the Minicat dump. Now, again, this is high level, okay? Like I mentioned, as an analyst, because if let's say your solution, your configuration has been already set to prevent this, you are done, right? But what if you want that additional visibility? So let me share with you, we can actually request for process focus, okay? This is what we so-called, that's why we don't waste bandwidth. We only you only look at things that you think is interesting, right? You don't need to actually record everything. And as a matter of time, right, you can see that my focus process is now ready. Now, what happens when I trigger the process focus? The console goes to the endpoint, take that information out before, during, and after, and then present it to you here. So let us go to the presentation. We view the process focus. Now you can see over here, again, this is a timeline or event. So what is the timeline or event? It goes to CMD, it goes to PowerShell, exactly what we see, okay? And if we go further, right, if we go through the PowerShell, it actually goes through some of the script execution is started. So in this case, the team here, you have to understand when a file is being executed, it might not get executed. Remember one thing, this is my first mistake when I do forensic investigation. It doesn't mean that there's a PowerShell means that the process started, means that the process is started. It don't mean that. You have to see that it is actually being started. Let me actually show you how you can review that. Okay, give me a minute. So you can see over here that this script has the PowerShell has already been started. It has a process ID. Once it has a process ID, means that it's actually being started. And the command line is this, right? You can see over here. And it also tells you that the script text is actually along this way. Now you can see a lot of information here, right? In the interest of time, let me go through something that's important. You see the label, right? Brown color means script. Orange color means process. Purple color means what? Network. Okay, let us go to the network because network is also something that we are interested in. So you see that our network, right, PowerShell, we are able to see that it is going to this domain, ISGD. Does that mean what does it mean? What does it translate to? Is it the same thing that we see? Yes. Let me actually show you. Let me show you the command. The command, the domain controller is what? Is going to is.good. Right? So we capture this. We capture this that it is actually trying to go out. It is a network, right? It is a DNS.
Right.
It's trying to resolve this thing, right? So after it resolve itself, right? We also have you to do the A record. This is.good, right? This URL reflects to this IP address. And when we continue itself, you will see that the network, the event type is connect. So once you see connect, right, it means that it actually has successfully connected to this URL, all right, to this IP address via port 80. Okay,
Right.
so you know that this is a successful compromise. And therefore, the malware payload has already been downloaded on the memory itself because this is a faultless attack and it automatically run. So in this case, now Gaurav, what I want to tell you is that sometimes when things happen, right, one thing that we want to learn from this instance is that it might not be necessarily a successful compromise. Sometimes it might not because your Windows has certain protection to prevent that from happening. But what we can see a telltale sign is that if network connection has been established itself, now we are almost certain that the file has already been triggered and nothing is actually preventing it from happening. Now come back this thing, credential dumping. Okay, very interesting. Okay, this is another example that I want to show you. So for example, credential dumping again PowerShell download. Again, this is actually what we so-called minicats credential dump. Okay, let me actually share with you encoder command. This is very interesting. Encoder command. Encoder command. Why does PowerShell needs encoder command, right? So you can see over here, this is a PowerShell encoder command. Again, it's a CMD PowerShell. Let me actually teach you how to do that. Okay, let me actually guide you how to do that. Now, PowerShell actually encoder is actually using base 64. Usually, most of the time, base 64. Now, if you see all these things, right? Now, the question is that what does this mean to you? Now, let me actually go through you. I hope that this is actually interesting, not something boring.
No.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to copy this PowerShell, right? I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to decode. So the decoding says that, it is actually trying to go to, remember, look at this, GitHub content.com, trying to invoke minicats. Immediately you know what's happening, right? It is actually a download string going to this URL to do a minicats. Now, interesting. Gaurav, question. Is this a successful compromise or is this not a successful compromise? What do you think?
So ideally, this is a successful compromise. I mean, when it comes to normal antivirus and everything. In this case, if the connection happens and the download of the file happens, then it is still lying on the file. But since we are not executing the command, we are not able to execute the dump credential command, then I think it is not successful.
Good, very well done, very well answered, right? That is a key. So today there's a certain uncertainty. I don't know. So let us actually look at that. Let me actually request for process focus because the process focus will then tell me whether the connection was successful, right? So again, when I click, it's ready. View process focus itself. Now, let's go through all these things. Okay, PowerShell. See over here. Actually, I no need to go and decode the command. I no need. Okay.
Right.
That one is just I want to show you evidence that it actually everything in silence. Everything forensic investigation is everything is very scientific one. You cannot say that maybe or maybe not. So this is exactly what we saw. If let's say we decode the command, exactly the URL that is going through. All right. Saw that? Okay.
So honestly speaking, the command which is being showed in the decoder website, the base64 decoder website, is the exact command which I also used.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Good. So this is the A record. This is the IP address. Did it get connected itself? Let us take a look, right? Let us take a look. The network response.
I think it has got connected,
Yes, exactly.
but
Yeah, right. So
the file is
exactly.
also downloaded, but it is not executed.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So it gets connected over here, and this is the IP address, and you are seeing that this is actually 151.101.133.443. Now you look at this.
Right.
This is SSL connection, right? SSL.
Hmm.
Huh? So even if you
Hmm.
have a next generation firewall that says that I can do network based kind of antivirus scanning, they can't see the file. All right. Only your
Great.
endpoint can see the file because it is a 443, right? So all
So,
whatever.
I have a query. So, for example, let's say when we are talking about firewall, just a generic question, not related to silence.
Okay, no
But
problem.
what if I enable SSL inspection on my firewall?
Good question. Good question. Gaurav, you try to enable, and I'm very sure, 100% sure that you will kill your firewall. Your CPU utilization will go back all the way to 100%. I am
Okay.
very, very sure.
Yeah, so Gaurav, there is
Okay.
alternate way, like you can go for Zscaler. It will
Understood.
give you full SSL inspection.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
So a normal firewall is not meant to do SSL decryption, right?
Right.
It is a feature that is there, but it is definitely, I will not advise you to turn on. And the reason is because I have been working with Fortinet. I've been very familiar with Palo Alto, all these firewalls for many years
Hmm.
itself. Every time I see
Okay.
customers turn on that, it just kill the firewall. All right. So these are things
Understood.
that, yeah. So these are things that you see immediately give you that visibility. Is it a successful compromise? Is it not a successful compromise? Is it being able to connect to the internet? All these have been shown here. Now, the last demonstration that I want to go through is the weaponization, is the kill chain. This is something that I built myself, and I hope that with this, I can share uh, some of the way how an attacker does his thing. Now, in order for me to actually do this, I'm going to clear all these alerts because I want to make it clean so that when this thing happen, you'll see what are the alerts that you'll receive. Now, I'm going to delete all this detection itself. Again, going to
Okay.
Outlook. All right. So again, this attack, let me actually mention one. This attack will happen because I'm not doing any blocking. And this resonate, and this is what traditional EDR player does for you, right? They record everything, they give you a presentation. Then they tell you that there will be patient zero, and then they create IOC. So I'm going to actually execute. We have the capability to stop that. But for this demonstration itself, for this workshop, I'm going to let it run so that you know what you are seeing. This is an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to open. Like normal, right? Every day, normal, this is an important silence document. You have macros, you enable that, you put OK. All right. And then after that, you'll see that suddenly silence optics actually says, hey, what happened? What happened? What happened? You turn on enable the optics and then you enable macros only, then the silence optic is screaming like hell, right? It is like, hey, there's actually things that's happening. Then again, the silence optic came out. So you know that there's something very bad happened because it not only came out one time, it came out 2 times, right? It came out 2 times. Now what is happening? I'm not going to tell you what happened, okay? Because as an investigator, this is the fun part. When I do the attack, I will know exactly what happened. Okay, this is a problem. But you are not the attacker. You are not creating the attacks itself. So you do not know what is happening. What you can only know is what you see in the console. Now, later, let me actually go to a console, and then we use the alerts that is found in the console to piece up, to make sure that you understand, you are able to piece up what actually went wrong. This is actually more challenging because I create the attack methodology, so I already know what will happen. But normally, administrator or analyst will not know because you are looking at the console, right? Then you have to come up with the picture yourself. Okay, so give me a minute. The attack will run a while because I'm using a bit of sophisticated attack. I'm going to go through some of the things. There's backend. and therefore it takes a little bit of time, right? Give me a minute. So okay, so again, I've cleared all my stuff itself, and I have actually e-done optics 10, okay, over here, and I have actually the first instance was a PowerShell download, the second instance was a scheduled task persistence, the third part is the machine learning finds that hey, this is something not right, and it actually flag out itself. Now let us actually look at the PowerShell download first, because this is usually the first alert, and we want to see what is happening. Now you can see that this is an Excel spreadsheet that leads to a PowerShell, and these are all the commands itself. Now, again, I'm actually very interested in what happened. So I actually request for a process focus. Okay. This is an interesting part. I mean, let's now be a police investigator. So we are seeing a after murder approach, after a murder scene itself, and we are trying to use all the information that we have to piece that information out. Okay. I didn't show you how the attack goes through. I only tell you that, you only know that I open an Outlook and then I execute a file, and then suddenly all these alerts came in. Now, from a focus view, came already, right? Well, okay, so what happened here? Can anyone, no, wait, Excel, let me do a process request for. Now the Excel and the PowerShell is different because PowerShell, okay, later I show you, okay? So in the Excel, I want to view the process focus. The process focus says what? The Excel was actually being triggered by Outlook. So you roughly know that this Excel was not triggered by the human, by the users from a desktop. It was triggered because he was looking at the Outlook itself. And then after that, the Excel, once you open, you create some files, which is normal. Now, second part here, when you go into the details, right? PowerShell, and then I look at the alert itself. This is very interesting already. What is the interesting part? Okay, Excel, go to PowerShell. Always remember, parent ID and child ID must relate one. Okay, this is the parent ID and this is the child ID. We link that up. So the PowerShell also, once it's executed, you also go to conhost.exe. But today, conhost.exe didn't actually execute didn't actually do certain other, how do I say, other process. So let's not take a lot of focus on that. Okay, don't take a lot of focus on this process. Let's go through that. So this PowerShell actually execute the file, right? Whatever files, right? Not relevant. I also don't know what is happening, right? Remember, EDR, for this kind of investigation, there's no need for you to actually know everything one. Keep it simple. Okay, keep it simple. So you see that this file, if you don't know what this file is all about, don't worry. Okay, you just continue to see. As you see more, you will be able to understand more. So the PowerShell actually executed this script itself. Let me actually run through. The script is actually running. So what is the script running itself? You see over here, right? The script, this is actually exactly the script. Okay, so don't worry about that. Script you don't know and you don't understand, is never mind. So you look through all this, you become very boring, right? Very boring. You can't find anything that's useful. But again, don't worry. If you read through more things, you will be able to see a bit more information over here. Now you can see over here, green color means what? Again, green color means what? File, anything that's related to file. Orange means process. Brown means scripting. Purple means what? Network itself. Okay, so you can see that the green color came. The green color came is what? Suddenly during the whole process, right, the PowerShell, there's actually a surprise.exe here came into the picture. Hey, what is this? The path name is C drive temp surprise.exe. Wow, something very weird. And then after that, what happens? The PowerShell actually went to a network. This is a response. It went to the CDN, this domain, cdn.filesend.jp. Wow, very interesting. The A record is 104. Then it requests, you see, it requests for a file. It requests to get something from this URL. And then the network actually get connected. Okay, the connection time was successfully connected. It's able to actually get the file. Okay, and we saw that. And then this file was written into C drive temp. So this is what? This is actually creating. It is trying to create a space for it to dump the surprise. And you see that this, the right means that the file has already been downloaded and right into the hard disk. How come so quiet? Everyone there or everyone sleep already?
We are here. We are here.
I'm very scared everyone sleep. Okay, so still catch me, still understand what I'm talking, not too
Yes.
boring, Okay. Thank you for the kind response. All right. Okay, good. Okay, so you see the surprise, that they write into the hard drive already, So then after that, the PowerShell, right? You can see it. Now, I always like to look at all this. There's a link. You know PowerShell, you know surprise already, right? Surprise also came here. Process ID 4172. What does it mean? Surprise is executed. I no need to actually go and understand. Because every time a Windows execute a file successfully, there will be a process ID. Confirm one. Okay, no need to actually second thought. Surprise.exe. So PowerShell, go and execute this surprise.exe. See the link or not? You see the link already, PowerShell, go to actually execute the surprise.exe. Okay. So surprise.exe, this is the hash. Okay. If this has good or bad, later you can find out, right? But that's not our point here. And then we actually go through. Yeah, like I say, correct? Surprise.exe, process started. The surprise.exe executed. So in this case, right, what happened? Wow, this one confirm guarantee very malicious because it's a PowerShell and then it downloaded a file called surprise.exe and I saw that it's executed. Guarantee very malicious. If nothing happened, that is really a surprise. I will not say that nothing will happen. No, if we go back right to the detection again, device contains ETAN. Scheduled persistent task. Okay, open link, open a new tab itself. Go through a bit faster. I don't want to go through the focus view again, but you can see that this PowerShell also create a scheduled task. The scheduled task means that it actually create a scheduled task called in-how, and this scheduled task is what the command says that what in-how to execute this file surprise.exe on an hourly basis. So from the script, you already know already. I don't need to focus view. Okay, you already know that attackers very clever. Not only he wants to execute the file, but he also said that if in case you cannot execute the file, I want the system to automatically go and trigger the file every single hour. Okay, this is the second thing. Now, can you see this thing? Shadow file deletion.
Right.
Can anyone make a guess? If let's say I have a shadow file deletion, what probably might have happened in the endpoint? What kind of malware don't like shadow copy? Don't like you to be able to restore the file?
Ransomware.
Exactly, you are right, correct. That is the correct answer. Very good. Okay, so if let's say I go and view about it, you see surprise.exe, right? And then it came to a command called the vssadmin.exe. This is a command line, which is volume shadow copy delete. So it's telling the system to say that the ransomware lah, okay. Then the VS admin to say that I want to delete all shadow copies quietly, okay. Die already, okay. Ransomware, right? Now we haven't looked through the Windows 10, right? Now let me actually go back to the Windows 10. See what happened?
Right.
Ransomware already. So in this case, right, do we need to actually go to the PC to actually understand what is happening? No, no need. We actually from the console, we already is able to piece up all the story. And this is actually the power of silence. Now, yeah, so this is actually the end of the workshop and the demonstration of how we actually run through the whole thing. I hope that everyone is able to actually get something out of this session itself, right?
Yes. Yes.
I hope.
So I have a query here. For example, for example, currently, if I'm not wrong, silence doesn't block any network connections, right?
We don't. Yes, we don't.
Yeah. So for example, let's say I am not inside my corporate network. I am currently working from some remote office, or let's say I'm working from home right now. I receive one phishing email with similar attachment, which tries or let's say which takes me to a phishing website, and there it asks me to put all my personal credentials. So my question here is, for example, on my current traditional antivirus, I have a web module which kind of blocks all such websites. For example, let's say if it's a newly created website, then it might not block. But let's say if it is kind of hosted on already a bad reputed IP or bad reputed URL, it will block it. So now, so I'm not saying it will completely prevent me against any phishing attack, but for example, let's say we go forward with silence. So almost I have approximately 350 to 400 users in total who are working from home or from remotely many of the times. So how do we kind of have a security per se other than the awareness? So we have our awareness sessions and we have the emailers going to the users every week, and we also kind of conducting phishing campaigns for our users. But now in such case scenario where when a user receives such email and he opens a particular site, so silence wouldn't be able to block that particular site, right?
Okay, good question. All right, let me actually answer you what we can do and what we can't do. Okay.
Okay.
First thing, the solution is actually created to prevent attacks on the system itself. So if let's say this is a phishing attack, this is a phishing email, and once the users go to the phishing email, and the phishing email actually triggers automated way of downloading the files, and this is very common. Sometimes it actually forces you to download a file when you accept some active script. Now, if the file is actually malicious, definitely Silence Protect, you have seen before, it will actually block the file. Now, your question actually resides on the other side of the area whereby, what about, this phishing URL is actually malicious and the users mistakenly actually upload certain informations, important informations up to the cloud. That area is what we do not actually, what we actually do, because a few things, right? As you know, Silence doesn't use signature. So there's no way we can keep a reputational update database of all the URLs. And it will not be effective, right? I'll be very honest. I'm not saying that your traditional AV is not good, but your traditional AV, by keeping on-prem kind of URL database update, is very, 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 very not effective. Now, my suggestion is that probably you might want to actually look at Harare, which is the Zscaler that is able to actually prevent that on the fly in the cloud. So this kind of solution is better because everything is analyzed in the cloud on the fly. Right. Yeah. Right. So this is my suggestion for you.
So understood. Something like a cloud proxy and something like Silence.
Exactly. That's right.
Done. Understood. Understood. So I do not have any queries now. I'm done from my side.
Good, great. Okay, so any other questions on the floor before we wrap this up?
Pushparaj and Amit, do you have any other queries?
No, man.
All right. So if there's
Yeah,
no,
thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other queries, do let us know if, let's say, at the later part you have any questions. But I hope that today's sessions, everyone learned something out of it. And as you can see, a few areas before I wrap up is a summary is that it's actually very easy to use, right? It's really very easy to use. It's very easy to actually look at what happens, and from the console itself, you are able to actually derive roughly what is happening within the endpoint without actually going to the endpoint to look at what really happened. So this is actually all the value and benefits running on the silence optics. And with that, thank you very much and have a great weekend. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Take care.